Hello, and welcome back to AI news that you should know about for the week of June 12th. I'm your host, Ashley Coffey.
And I'm Daniel Hill. There is so much AI news out there in the world, we give you the highlights in 15 minutes or less. If you like what we do, please take a moment, leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts. It doesn't cost you anything, it's quick and easy to do, and it helps others to find the show. You can get there directly from the link in the show notes. This week on the show, we'll be talking about Apple unveiling Siri AI, a complete rebuild of its voice assistant. We'll talk about Anthropic launching Claude Fable 5. We'll talk about Anthropic's concept of a plan if unemployment hits 25%, and Google changing the game by decreasing its AI subscription price.
We'll be covering all of that on our show today, but first, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back. Let's dive in. All right, big story this week as WWDC 2026 happened and Apple rebuilds Siri from scratch with Google Gemini and lets iPhone users choose their AI. So here's some of the highlights coming out of WWDC so you don't have to sift through all the noise. iOS 27 extensions are going to turn iPhone into an AI marketplace where you can pick your default model across the entire system, not just inside one app. And then a new camera Siri mode lets you point your iPhone at anything and ask questions, get nutritional info from a plate of food. How is that? Or identify objects in real time. And Image Playground gets photorealistic generation and new editing controls, while Genmoji now suggests custom emoji based on your conversations. I don't use Image Playground. I just don't think it's a success. On-device processing keeps personal context private with the most powerful Siri AI requiring iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max, iPad M4 Plus, or Mac M3 Plus with at least 12 gigs of RAM. And in fall of this year, Mac users will get access to video podcasts in the Podcasts app, and Apple Podcasts on tvOS will also support video playback and will have a full complete redesign, and there will be a new search within a show feature to find an episode. And last but not least, everyone knows that Tim Cook is leaving Apple, and this was his final UWDC as CEO before handing over the role to John Turnus on September 1, marking a generational transition at Apple. So the past few years at Apple have been a little lackluster, and this year's WWDC stood out as one that kind of fell off compared to previous years. And we all know Apple is good about showmanship, but some of these updates also raise the question about devices becoming outdated faster due to the need for higher computing power. For example, iPhone 16 users were largely disappointed because many of the newly announced Siri AI and Apple Intelligence features, such as the voice expressiveness capabilities and deep camera integrations, are restricted to the iPhone Pro models or later. Also, users in the European Union were completely locked out of the new Siri AI updates due to regulatory hurdles. Wow. What are your thoughts here, Daniel?
There's a lot here. First, are these features that we're talking about for Siri's AI mode actually available today, or they're available in the future?
No, those will be available for iOS 27.
So not available as of
Not
today. And I
available.
think that's a really important point because Apple announced a lot of these updates a couple of years ago that they were coming. And so I thought when they announced these, it's because they actually released them, but they are still not available. And to what you mentioned before about requiring the latest hardware in order to use a lot of these features, these are things where people have bought high-end phones just a couple of years ago. The iPhone 16 is a great example. They're cut out of this entire update situation for being able to access all these AI tools. And obviously, I think there's on-device processing happening. That's why Apple's able to say this is secure, the security privacy controls that are in place when it's happening on your device. But it does cut a lot of people out of the ability to take advantage of these tools without upgrading.
And one thing I want to add here is I do feel like with this type of advancement that's constantly changing, like I myself have an iPhone 16 Pro because I haven't felt the need to upgrade. And part of my philosophy around that is like, one, I consider myself a power user, but two, whenever you upgrade to the Pro models of things, they do have a higher longevity period. The Oculus Quest Pro is a really good example of that. I have one. It came out like 4 years ago, but because the inside hardware was so beefy, it still works great today. And of course, like the price point has dipped down significantly, but I will say like that could be a good opportunity to consider getting the pro versions. That way you can keep them for longer and not having to keep upgrade.
Excellent points.
So, next up, Anthropic launched Cloud Fable 5, a model that tops benchmarks in coding, vision, knowledge work, and scientific research. This is coming out of Anthropic's blog. We will link the article in the show notes. That way you can read it yourself. So, on June 9th, Anthropic launched Claude Fable 5, its first publicly available Mythos class model. It sets the new state of the art benchmarks in software engineering, scientific research, and complex knowledge work, and its advantage grows significantly on harder, longer running tasks. It outperforms predecessors, including Claude Opus 4.8, by more than 10% on major evaluations. Now, I want to give credit to Reddit user Ariland. I'll make sure to post his handle in the show notes. That way he gets credit for this. But he has a top post on the cybersecurity subreddit, and he's also a cybersecurity professional. And I want to read this because this really frames why this is important. Quote, I came across the full release details and the security implications are worth discussing separately from the product news. Anthropic shipped the same model as two products. Fable 5 is the public version. Classifiers intercept offensive cyber requests and hand them to the weaker Opus 4.8. Mythos 5, the same model without those classifiers, stays locked to vetted defenders through Project Glasswing, which we've spoken about. The split exists because during red team testing, Mythos found and exploited 0 days in every major OS and browser and built working Linux privilege escalation exploits from a disclosed CVE in under a day at a few $1,000s in compute. Now, the defensive numbers from Glasswing are also real. Cloudflare found 2,000 bugs, 400 high or critical. Mozilla found 271 vulnerabilities in Firefox, 150. 10 times what it caught in the previous release, and over 10,000 high or critical bugs across systematically important software in the first weeks. And what they found most significant, open source maintainers have asked Anthropic to slow disclosures because they cannot write patches fast enough. Finding bugs is now fast and cheap. Fixing them still runs on human time. That gap is where attackers live. Practical implication for defenders. Treat high severity CVE exploitation windows as hours, not weeks. Prioritize auto update paths for internet facing systems. And one thing worth flagging if you plan to use these models, Anthropic is requiring a 30-day data retention on Fable 5 and Mythos 5 traffic for safety monitoring. Not used for training, deleted after 30 days. So factor that in before routing sensitive workloads through them. Lots to unpack here. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
First, I really like this approach because it gives an opportunity for the companies that really need the highest level of cybersecurity to have access to the tools to find these bugs. And the stats you shared about how many bugs Cloudflare found, Cloudflare runs a lot of the internet. It's very important that they find those bugs. And I like the way Anthropic is saying, okay, you can have access to this tool, but you are going to get a weaker version of it if it's going to be a offensive cyber request. I love that they've classified it that way. I think this is a really good approach, and these bugs being caught is keeping us all safer online, whether we realize it or not. So I think this is great.
Awesome. And we'll link that. That way you can read it in the show notes. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about Anthropic has a concept of a plan if employment hits 25, and Google just fired a warning shot in the AI subscription price wars.
Welcome back. Continuing with our stories, Anthropic has a concept of a plan if unemployment hits 25%. By way of background, we've talked multiple times on this show about the layoffs that have been in the news, and according to the CEOs of those companies, due to AI. One thing that comes up in a lot of the conversations I have personally is, what should anyone study today if jobs are going to be replaced by AI? Currently, unemployment in the United States is 4.3%. The last time unemployment was above 10% was in 2009, and before that was in 1983. By way of context about unemployment rates, the highest unemployment rate of the 20th century was during the Great Depression, when it was 25% back in 1933. Okay, here's the news. Anthropic has released a paper detailing 3 different proposals, one for a world with 5% unemployment, one with 10% unemployment, and one with so-called unprecedented unemployment. Anthropic said in a statement, quote, "We are not seeking job displacement. We are working to prevent or minimize it. Some amount of displacement, though we cannot say how much, may be an intrinsic consequence of the technology, and our responsibility is to prepare for it and respond to it. End quote. I loved that approach right off the bat because, yes, the workforce is changing. Things are changing in what skills are needed, and it's not a thing that will change one time and then never again. Obviously, this is going to be a continually evolving thing, but I really like that Anthropic has put together at least an approach for each of these three scenarios. I won't get into detail about them on this. I'll link to it in the show notes. Ashley, what's your take?
Thank you for picking this, Daniel. I love this. And one thing that I wanted to highlight here that I think is the best part of this entire article is where you said some amount of displacement, though we cannot say how much, may be an intrinsic consequence of this technology, and our responsibility is to prepare for it and respond to it. Yes, that hits the nail on the head right there. And I'm going to try to reiterate that to people when they ask me the same question. So I feel like they're doing a good job in trying to be proactive, but it shouldn't be up to one private company to find a solution for this. It should be a matter of, I don't know, maybe the government working together, a cross platform between public, private, and nonprofit sectors. I don't think just one company is going to figure it out, but I appreciate that they're putting something forward as a contingency plan, because to me that builds trust, the community, to say, yes, we're an AI company. Yes, we know displacement is coming. We don't know to the extent it's coming, but we're going to at least try to empower you with the skills and knowledge to succeed in the future. And for that, I respect Anthropic for doing it.
Yes, I agree. But I also think it kind of comes across like someone typed into Claude, how should the world respond to increasing unemployment rates? And whatever Claude came back with, they were like, let's turn that into a white paper. So I do see the, kind of both sides of the coin here.
Awesome. I'll have
Let's
to
go
read
on.
those white papers. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I'll link to it. Let's go on to our last story. Google just fired a warning shot in the AI subscription price wars. By way of background, last week on the show, we talked about the increasing costs of AI that are starting to come through. For instance, GitHub recently moved to a usage based billing model for its AI, and users were experiencing sticker shock. Just a few hours of usage was blowing through their entire monthly allotment of AI credits. Here's the news: Google just made its budget AI subscription plan more budget friendly. The company announced that it's cutting the monthly price of Google AI Plus from $8 a month to $5 a month, while doubling the storage included in that tier from 200 gig to 400 gig. This is interesting because there's a lot included. You get video generation via Omni Flash, you get Google Studio Flow, Notebook LM, and other tools included as well. Ashley, what's your take on this?
I just want some price regulation in the AI world, because it's like trying to walk through maybe like an Alice in Wonderland scenario blindfolded and there's landmines everywhere. That's what I feel like the AI pricing wars is. Google right now, like we talked about this in our previous episode, I think, where there's some of their pricing recently has been kind of confusing, especially if you own multiple Google products. It's like who gets the beta model, who retains it past the beta, like all this crazy stuff. So it's nice that they're trying to fix something. I just don't know if it's like as transparent as we want it to be. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Google is playing the long game here because they
Mhm.
have deep pockets. They're profitable from years of their business. They recognize that if they can win on price now, eventually, long term, they'll be able to eliminate their competition and then they can raise the price to whatever they want and no one will be able to stop them. Consumers, customers, users are focused on what are the short term cost savings, right? If Gemini is cheaper than Anthropic's models or OpenAI's models, is Gemini good enough? That's how I would look at it too. But the long term effects of what happens when competition is eliminated are never good. So I think there's both sides of the way Google's approaching that.
Agreed.
That is it for our AI news that you should know about this week. You can find links to everything we've talked about in the show notes. And please connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear what you think of the show and how we can improve it. You can find me on Instagram at Daniel Hill Media.
If you want more tech talk, you can find me on Instagram at AshleyRCoffey89. That's ASHLEYCOFFEY 89, where you can sign up for my monthly AI newsletter where you get the latest updates. The link in my bio.
Thank you for listening and come back next week for more AI news you should know about.